Yeah, because... All right, I believe someone lost a Dominican ID. Wellington Enrique de la Cruz Abad, we have your ID. And we also have a key that says, Únete a los colegios electorales. Neri. Neri. Neri Medina. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our annual conference for Teachers of English 2023. I'm so happy personally to see all those faces that I missed after such a long time. And we're back and we're here to stay. So welcome to our conference for Teachers of English. It's a true pleasure to have all of you present here at Hotel Catalonia. This is actually the third day, as you may know, of our conference. Our first day was on last Wednesday at the Dominico Americano, where we had our opening ceremony. We had some speeches from members of our board of directors, and we had a plenary session. Yesterday, we were in Santiago de los Caballeros. How many people were in Santiago yesterday? All right. So today culminates the last day of our conference here at Hotel Catalonia. This activity is brought to you thanks to the immense support of the U.S. Embassy in Santo Domingo. It is an honor to mention our distinguished guests present here today. First of all, all the audience. A round of applause for yourself. I would like to acknowledge some of the members of our board of directors, Ms. Lucy Tren de la Marche, Ms. Mari Carmen Orizondo, our distinguished executive director and rector of UNICDA, Ingeniero Ramon Sosa. A round of applause for you. From Centro Cultural Dominico Americano, Amiri Selena and Sandra Rodriguez, who were our hosts yesterday. And of course, from the U.S. Embassy, it's our pleasure to mention Mr. William Little, Regional English Language Officer, and Alexander Lopez, English Program Coordinator. So this activity is, as I mentioned, is brought to us by the U.S. Embassy, without whom this event would not be possible. Year after year, we thank you for your support. We'd like also to acknowledge this conference main sponsor and companion of the ICDA, also year after year, National Geographic Learning, and their representative, Mr. Tiago Ribeiro. And we'd also like to acknowledge our sponsors for this conference, Pearson, Antillean Service, Oxford, Edumas, and our friends from Rico, who also supported with technology. We have some stands outside. Make sure to take time to visit them to see all the material that they have to offer. A round of applause for our sponsors. Now, I personally like to please my audience, so we're going to have a little raffle later on. How to participate. From now on, what you do, you're going to take your mobile device, go on Instagram, and look for UNICDA RD, UNICDA, UNICDARD. And all you have to do, you have to look for the post of our presenter, Mary Scholl. All you have to do is follow UNICDA RD, click on like on that particular post where you see Mary Scholl, and then comment something, whatever you want. All right, you're happy to be here. I hope lunch is good today. Whatever you want to mention, and you'll be participating, all right? So before lunch, we'll announce a few winners, and then later on this afternoon, we'll announce more winners. So at this point, it is a pleasure to call to the stage our Regional English Language Officer from the U.S. Embassy in Santo Domingo, Mr. William Little, who will share some information about the wonderful work that the U.S. Embassy has done in Santo Domingo regarding English language teaching. And don't forget to come to his session later on this afternoon. You can check it in your program. So with you, Mr. Little.
Okay, good morning, everybody. How is everyone? I'm very impressed. I arrived here this morning and just in time to drop off a couple things and then duck into a session. And it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I know everybody's had a coffee or two, but still, the energy was amazing. And the presentation was wonderful. So I just want to add on to what was said before. Let's give yourselves a quick round of applause. So I'm just going to have a brief introduction right now, and just to one slight correction is that I am the Regional English Language Officer, and what that means is that I work for the State Department, and I cover a region. And my sole job is to work with English teachers, ministers, students to improve the English capability and capacity in every country. Currently, in the past, I was posted in Jakarta, in Indonesia. 2 years ago, I was in Senegal, in West Africa. And just last year, I arrived at my post, which actually is Panama City, right? So from the U.S. Embassy in Panama City, I cover the Caribbean, I cover Central America, and several countries in South America. So for me, as an English teacher slash diplomat, but as an English teacher first, because I've taught English for 30 years, all right, it's such a wonderful opportunity to visit every country and see the context of the English teaching. And I just want to let you know, I've only been here 3 days. This has been a great opportunity to be here for the conference. And quite frankly, I'm blown away. I'm incredibly impressed with what has transpired over the last 3 days, but over the last many years by the English teachers in Dominican Republic, not just Santo Domingo. So again, congratulations to you all. Yeah. So, and to further clarify what my role is I do work with colleagues here at the U.S. Embassy in Santo Domingo, and the materials that we have and that we're going to talk about later this afternoon at 2 are all available on the website here. So we want to be sure that you as teachers, as institutions, even your students are engaged with the embassy so that we can all work together to improve the English in the country. And I will just say one last thing, and I probably should have said it first, is that I'm very, very grateful to have been invited to this conference, and I look forward to the successful completion this afternoon. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Little, for these words. And I invite you all to come to a session this afternoon if you want to know a little bit more about what the U.S. Embassy and our RELO does in the region. So ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for us to initiate our first plenary of the day. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about our speaker today, Miss Mary Scholl. I think some of you might know this name. Mary Scholl deeply values presence, learning, empathy, creativity, and curiosity, and is founder and fellow of the Institute of Collaborative Learning in Costa Rica. She has been teaching language for over 30 years, designing and implementing educational projects in Latin America in over 18 years, and served as an English language specialist for 16 years in 9 different countries. A teacher trainer and trainer of trainers, Mary is also a certified practitioner and facilitator at the Center of Holding Space and holds a certification in teaching Mindfulness Meditation from Greater Good Science Center and the Awareness Training Institute at the University of California at Berkeley. She holds an MA in Teaching Leadership at Teachers College at Columbia University. She has lived and/or taught on 4 different continents and currently enjoys working virtually around the world from her home in rural Costa Rica. In addition to face-to-face work wherever she is invited, she is a frequent presenter at local and international conferences in 2021 and was named as one of the top 30 English language specialists by the U.S. Department of State in recognition of her lasting impact on the specialist program and on the field of TESOL. She has trained a lot of us, including myself, which is why it's a pleasure and an honor to introduce Mary Scholl on her presentation, 1 + 1 = 3 or 2,000. Synergy in our English language classroom and workshop. Activities to enhance synergy in the English language classroom. With you, our dearest Mary Scholl. Under a round of applause, make her feel the energy and the love.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Oh my gosh. Whew. I'm just taking this in for a minute. Would you help me? Look around the room. Look who's here. Look at everybody. This is beautiful. Look around the room. If you need to stand up, stand up. Look at who's here. That is beautiful. It's so wonderful to be back here in person with you all. Is this in the right place? Is it? I went it below my eyes. I was like looking at. Is that okay? All right. Can you hear me in the back row? Raise your hand if you can hear me, back row. Raise your hand in the middle if you can hear me. Raise your hand in the front if you can hear me. Ah, good. I'm glad our hands work. Yeah, I think I'm good for now. Thanks. Yeah. I think this is my 7th or 8th time coming as a plenarista. Okay, I'm speaking Spanglish today. Is that okay? I went to Annabelle's session on translanguaging, and I think I have permission in my head to speak Spanglish. And I first came here in 2004, when this conference was in the auditorium at the Dominico. And I was scared. And 19 years later, to be with you here after 19 years of learning and growing, it is a deep honor. And I'm kind of emotional, so if I cry, cry with me. Cry with me. Yeah, seeing so many of you today already, getting some awesome hugs, it's a beautiful gift. So thank you for the invitation to come. Thank you, National Geographic Learning. I've been working with them for the last 3 years or so, and it's been beautiful. And thank you to the Dominico for the invitation. And of course, to the Embassy and the Relo office and the State Department. All 3 of you are my homes. So it's just like a family reunion, right? How many of you have taken a course with me or my trainers here in the last 10 years? How many of you have come to one of our courses? And how many of you are working with Minerd, teaching English with Minerd? Look at all those hands. Woohoo! Thank you. That's awesome. How many of you working with Minerd have used the American English Teacher's Guide? How many of you like it? And how many of you have been using the workbooks? Have you? Yeah? Wow. Well, that's exciting. Those have been some of our big projects here, and we hope that they are of use. And I hope what I'm going to talk about today is also of use. When they showed me the theme for the plenary about synergy, I was like, wow, that's a great theme. And then I, of course, Googled synergy in the classroom. There's not a lot out there. I couldn't steal very much. Right? But it's such an important topic. Synergy is actually what happens in a classroom that makes learning dynamic and fun. So after Googling online, I decided to look in my computer. My computer has 20, 30 years of documents and course applications. All your applications are still on my computer. And I was Googling synergy, and the first document that came up was Robert's application from 2009, where he talked about how important synergy is for teachers. So I thought that was kind of a fun synchronistic experience, yeah. So today I get to talk with you about synergy. I'm going to talk a little bit about synergy and about what I think we need to do to create the foundations for synergy in our classrooms, and then share some questions for lesson planning for synergy. So I'm hoping that it is both practical and also hopefully thought-provoking and a little touchy-feely, a little more ethereal. We'll see. The first thing I want to do with you all is something that we started during the pandemic, and something that I've been thinking a lot about in the last 5 or 6 years. It's the concept of belonging. What makes you feel like you belong? What makes your students feel like they belong in their class? Do they feel that? And we started a habit that I'm going to do with us this morning, and it's a habit of welcoming. It's fairly simple, but it's also profound. And I hope that you feel welcomed. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Everybody. Yeah. Welcome, teachers. How many teachers have we got here? Teachers, welcome. Welcome, administrators. Welcome, learners. Everybody a learner? Yeah. Welcome other people that are not administrators or learners or no, we're all learners. That's everybody. Welcome everyone who's a little tired. Anybody a little tired? Welcome everybody who's got energy. Welcome everybody who's tired and has energy. Right? Welcome everybody who might feel a little angry or frustrated right now. Is anybody feeling a little frustrated with anything? Welcome everybody who's happy. Woo! Welcome everyone who might feel a little lonely or disconnected. Yeah? And welcome everyone who feels a sense of belonging. Yeah. Welcome everyone who's eager to learn. And welcome everybody that already knows everything. My full cups, everybody who knows everything, you're welcome too. I'm happy to have you here too. Welcome everyone who wants to explore synergy in the classroom. And welcome everyone who already knows about synergy. Anybody, people already have? Okay. Welcome everyone. Super happy to have you here. You're very welcome. Is there anything else we need to welcome? Life. Welcome life. Welcome everyone who's alive. Welcome everyone who's breathing. Yeah. Anything else? The presence of God. The presence of God in our lives. Welcome presence of God. Yes. Mystery. However you celebrate and live that. Welcome. Welcome the Spirit that is greater than we are. Yeah. All right. We're going to go through my plan today, hopefully for us, is we did the arrival already, right? It's the welcoming. It's those words that bring us here. We're going to look at synergy, and the classroom as an ecosystem. Then we're going to look at the relational foundations of synergy, and then we're going to look at lesson planning, and then we're going to have an experiment. We'll see if we can synergize here with, how many people do we have here? 1,000. Let's count off. No time. No time. All right. I have a really important question. Are you ready? Yes. When does learning feel most engaging and alive for you? Just think about that. When are you really engaged as a learner? And is it more like the picture on the left or the picture on the right? Which picture do you most relate to? The left or the right? And which picture represents how you'd like your classroom? How many of you want your classroom to be like a river, flowing, everything's flowing? How many of you want your classroom to work like a perfect clock or watch? All those gears are working perfectly. How many want that? Not as many people as yesterday. How many people would like both? Yeah, it was a trick question on my part, right? Right? I want my classroom to have some of the elements of the clock or the watch that works perfectly, that our pieces work together. It's a little mechanistic, but all those pieces function. But I also want that natural flow and ease. So there's a mixture here of control and flow, right? Yesterday, I was in Santiago giving this plenary for the first time. This is the second time I'm giving this particular plenary, so I'm still practicing. I'm open to feedback if you have feedback. But yesterday, we were chatting, and Carlin actually said that she would like it to be a waterproof watch. I love that image. And then I thought, I think I wanted a waterproof watch in the river. I was like, yeah. So we had a synergistic moment yesterday where we created new things that we hadn't created before. And that is exactly the kind of moment I hope for every day in my classroom. I like that. That's when learning feels alive to me. Not when my students give me the correct answer. It's nice. It's the clock. That's good. But when my students, or when I say something that I didn't plan on saying, that's unexpected, that's in the flow, that's when it really feels alive to me. Right? That's the synergy. So, as much as I believe in goals and objectives, yes, I believe in that, and it's important, we also need to create the conditions and the space for the unexpected, right? So that synergy can happen. I see my classroom as a river ecosystem with a waterproof watch in the river now. And when I think about like all my students, all the different kinds of plants that like each student can be different kinds of plants in the ecosystem or different animals in the ecosystem, all interacting together in a synergistic way. So I use this as a metaphor for myself. When I walk into the classroom, I see my students, or when I turn on my Zoom and I have all those little boxes, I see my students, right? But I see them as this ecosystem. I don't see them only as individuals who are learning. I see them as parts of a system that all function together to help everybody learn, to keep that river flowing. So that's one of the metaphorical images that I have. And the thing about synergy that I think is really important, synergy is when the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So what is in the classroom with our students, whatever happens is more than what any one student could have done, or any two individual students. Because we come together and we have this social learning experience, we create something that is more than what any one of us could have done. And the thing about synergy is it's not just that it's more, it's that in positive synergy, there are benefits to more than we realize. So a healthy river system has a lot of benefits that we need. Now, how are your rivers here? Are they healthy? We got to work on that, people, because some rivers are healthy, right? Do any of you have a favorite river here in the Dominican Republic? Yeah? If your rivers are healthy, that helps our drinking water. If our rivers are healthy, we have activities that we do at the river that are both cultural and sports and for food and nutrition. Right? If our rivers are healthy, it limits flooding. Right? If our rivers are healthy, we're going to help fight climate change. There are benefits to having a healthy river that are beyond the river. If your English language classroom is a healthy ecosystem, your benefits go way beyond the classroom. Right? It's not just for those students. It's not just for you and those students in the moment. Right? Those students are going to teach their friends. They're going to teach their families. They're going to get jobs that are going to be better paid. If you really want to zoom out, if your students learn English well, it's going to support the economic system in the Dominican Republic. It's going to help the whole country. Right? So the benefits of having a healthy learning environment in your classroom go beyond the classroom. That is synergy. So you all already are living synergy. Yeah, already. I imagine you are. There are 5 words that I want to share with you around synergy that I think are important for us as English language teachers to begin to learn, to know and think about as we are implementing this in our classroom. These are concepts that come from synergy and systems thinking. The first two are interconnectedness and interdependence. Right. Interconnectedness and interdependence. This is where we actually recognize that we're all connected. My students don't come into the classroom and just sit there as individuals. They're connected. We're connected. We're impacted by each other. And I have to recognize that in order to co-create conditions for synergy. And we're also interdependent. We need each other. I need you, you need me, maybe a little, right? We need our students. If I recognize interconnectedness and interdependence, I will interact differently with you, with my students, with the world. Biodiversity. So biodiversity is this, we have this in the Dominican Republic, right? We also have it in Costa Rica, we have it around the world, but it's big in our countries, right? It's the variety and the complexity and the abundance of all the different species here. We have diversity here. We have biodiversity to some degree here, but we have diversity here. And if we want to create or co-create the conditions for synergy in the classroom, we need to recognize diversity, right? And looking to nature and biodiversity as a model, as a reality outside the classroom, I think will help us understand it a little bit more inside the classroom. The other 2 terms, so those are the first 3, interconnectedness, interdependence, biodiversity. The other 2 words I want to share with you are liminal space and emergence. How many of you know the word liminal space? How many of you, is it new for you, a new term, liminal space? Awesome. Happy birthday. It's a new vocabulary word. And who doesn't like a new vocabulary word, right? We do, we love it. I also think liminal space, though, it's not only a new vocabulary word, it's a really important word for us as teachers. because it's what we work with. Liminal space is the space between one reality and a new reality. So the old reality was a caterpillar. There's a liminal space where change and transformation happens. And then there's a new reality. There's a butterfly. Right? We are constantly working with students in the liminal space of change and transformation. Right? So we need to learn about the liminal space and how can we really be productive. And you already live this. I'm giving you words to something you already do. But learning that might shift your understanding a little bit. Right? It might give you a different kind of clarity or paradigm in what we do. So the liminal space, it's a threshold of ambiguity and disorientation. It's the changing space. It's in the liminal space that a lot of synergy happens in our classrooms. It doesn't happen when we have the right answer to everything. It happens when we don't have the right answer, and we're exploring, and we're being creative and playful. Or we're actually growing in a natural way. And what happens is that out of liminal space, we have what emerges. And so the concept of emergence, I just want you to hold that because I love our institutions, but our institutions are helping us focus on reaching competencies, and we need that. And we also need to see what else is emerging, what else is coming out of us that is the unexpected. And so if we see our classrooms as ecosystems, synergy is going to be a natural experience. Right? So that is the first metaphor I want to set us up with. And synergy, as we've been talking a little bit about it, let's check my timing. It's when we come together and create something more than what we could have, right? And I've mentioned that. I'm going to repeat it over and again and again. It benefits more than just us, right? Synergy benefits a lot of people beyond us. And Stephen Covey, how many of you all are familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? How many of you are highly effective people? I'm not highly, but I'm sort of effective. Habit number 6, Covey puts out there, is synergize. Right? It's synergizing. And one of the things he said is that everything in nature is synergistic. Right? Nature is synergy. There's a lot of different examples that people put out there. One that I like is when you're thinking about cows. How often do you look at cows? Do you have cows in your life? Some people. And when you see the birds, do you see the birds that come on the back of the cows? Right? So the birds are eating the bugs on the cows, right? The birds get the bugs, and the cows get to be free of the bugs, right? So there's a synergistic relationship, a mutual benefit there. You can look at it in lots of different ways in nature, too. I like in the oceans, there's certain fish that live in certain places in the ocean that the fish keeps certain predators away from other fish, right? And they help each other out. They create a synergistic relationship. And so nature is built on synergy. And I'm thinking that in our classrooms, you're already experiencing synergy. There's 2 quotes that I want to share with you. First one is Heraclitus, ancient wisdom, expect the unexpected or you won't find it. Right? If you're not looking for synergy, you're not going to find it, probably. Right? If we don't co-create the conditions for synergy, we won't live it. The second quote is by me. Very humble. Not very humble. But as I was doing this, I kept thinking, what's the big message I want to share with you all? And that really is it. If we don't co-create these conditions, we won't live synergy. So how do you co-create those conditions? That's what I want to share with you. I'm assuming that many of you already do some of this, And this might be new for some of you as well. Covey talks a little bit about, I want to go to the key conditions for synergy in the classroom. Win-win communication, a sense of shared goals and active participation, open-mindedness, inclusiveness, relationships and the environment where collaboration, mutual respect, and diverse perspectives are cherished and protected. And then space to expect the unexpected. Right, those are some of the conditions. And I'm going to go in a little bit more detail about some of these, how we create these conditions. Covey talks in his habit number 6 is this synergy. And he talks about this idea of win-win communication. How many of you have heard of win-win communication before? So, yeah. The idea here is that, let's see, let me find a slide here. So the idea here is thinking about trust and cooperation. When it's low, we have defensiveness. How many of you experience defensiveness in your classroom? Right? I didn't give a student say, "Teacher, you never taught me that. I don't have time for this. This is too much. This is too hard." Do you hear those things from your students? And how about you all in your class? How about you all in your institutions? "This is too much paperwork." Oh, right? Or "I don't have enough time to plan." Right? There's a lot of defensive. When I have low trust and low cooperation, I'm going to become defensive. I'm going to figure out how I can win, but it's at the risk of somebody else losing. Right? When there's more trust and more cooperation, we tend to have a respectful form of communication where we're able to compromise. So I might say to my students, "Yeah, I hear it's really hard. It's a lot of work. I'll give you half the homework if you do half of it right now in class. How about that?" Right? We compromise. Do you compromise with your students? Yeah, right? We need to, as we need to build trust. We want them to be successful. Right? So then the challenge is, how can I build up so much trust and so much cooperation that we can do a win-win kind of communication where they win and I win. We win. We all win together. Right? And that's what we're looking at. So I'm going to go into now, it's all about relationships. Right? Synergy is based on relationships. And as you all know, I often talk about relationships in the classroom. That's one of the big themes. As much as I love thinking about teaching reading, writing, listening, grammar, culture, I like that stuff. But I feel like relationships are so fundamental for us to have successful experiences in the classroom. An old image of teaching, I think it's old, is this idea that the teacher's role is just to share knowledge, right? If your job is only to give your students knowledge and you have power over them, you're not going to get a lot of synergy. Right? You're not going to get it's part of the role. It's important for us to have knowledge. It's important for us to share that knowledge. But teaching is so much more. Teaching and learning is so much more now. And I know that we already know this, right? It's a dynamic environment. Learning happens in the interactions between the students and between us and the students, right? So in this vision of the classroom, we need to have good relationships and we need synergy. It's actually a need, right? My job as a teacher is to lead the co-creation of the environment. And I'm doing that here with us now. Even though there's one of me and 1,000 of you, I'm also leading a co-creation of this environment by asking you questions, by bringing you in, by creating the presentation, by trying to interact some with you all. Right? I'm trying to create a certain environment in this room, in this context. But I'm not the only person creating it. Every single one of you, and now I'm like making eye contact with 1,000 people, right? Every single one of you is co-creating with me. Your choice to listen, your choice to think about what I'm saying, or your choice. I was in Amiris's session this morning as well, and I was sitting behind a teacher from who teaches with me, Nerd, Angela. Thank you, Angela. And it was brilliant because Angela teaches English, but she also is an English learner. And she had her phone up and she had the translation on so that she could hear and see the English that Amiris was saying, and it was also being translated into Spanish. It was brilliant. I took a video without her permission. Then I asked her afterwards, so thank you, Angela, wherever you are. Angela was co-creating her learning experience with Amiris. And the extra benefit was me. I was like, oh, I got to videotape this. I have to use this sometime in the future when we talk about the use of AI in the classroom. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It was inclusive. Right? And that happened this morning. So this is a little bit of synergy for me. But it's an example of how you co-create every experience you're in. Even if I'm up here with a microphone, you co-create it with me. So thank you all for co-creating this experience with me. I really appreciate it. All right. So the relational foundations. Synergy happens when we have good relationships. So I want to look at some of the pieces of those relationships. One of them is the human connection. All right, so when I have a good connection, there's more space and energy and permission for synergy. And Marshall Rosenberg, who is the founder of Nonviolent Communication, has a lot to say about fostering connection. But the biggest thing is this. If I am seeking to understand your needs, or as a teacher, I'm seeking to understand my students' needs, that is going to foster connection. Punto final. I le dije que quería hacer Spanglish, right? I have to. It's like, you feel different I feel different when I say punto final. Like, that's it. You get, bottom line, if you're trying to understand their needs, you will connect better with them. If you are connecting with them, you are creating and co-creating conditions for synergy. Right? That's the biggest one. How do we do that? We build trust. Right? We build trust. One of the resources that I really like to look at for building trust is Brené Brown. How many of you have read Brené Brown's work? Some of you. Okay, well, happy birthday to the rest of you. Another good resource. Take a picture. Brené Brown talks about, she made this really nice acronym of BRAVING for building trust. And when I think about what's happening in my classroom and how, if I want to have win-win communication, I need to build trust. And I need to lead the building of trust in my classroom. So I need to think about boundaries, I need to think about reliability, accountability. I'll tell you a little bit about the vault. And integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. So these are Brené Brown's. You can Google it and find out more about it. She's got some great books out there as well. I want to go into a little bit of the questions that I like to ask myself when I'm thinking about, am I building trust? And I have to tell you, I am not perfect. So just because I'm talking about it doesn't mean I'm always good at it. Okay? I am not a superhuman being. These are for, if you do everything here, then you are a superhuman being. But I think they're nice questions to work on. So, when I think about boundaries, are we clear with ourselves and others about what's okay and not okay in our classrooms? Right? How many of you have kids that bully each other? Or that tease each other? Right? And is that okay? It's hard to stop sometimes, right? It's hard to always see it. But that bullying is that kind of interaction is going to completely squash synergy, right? I remember many years ago I was learning Norwegian. I was an exchange student in Norway. For 1 year, I went to high school there. And I learned to speak Norwegian. And at one point, a few months in, I said something incorrectly. And one of my classmates laughed and repeated what I said incorrectly. About 5, to me he said it 1,000 times, but I think he probably just said it 2 or 3 times. But I was so embarrassed that I stopped talking for 2 weeks. And that experience really resonates with me, and it reminds me of how important it is to set boundaries of how we interact, so to help our students support each other's learning, right? Reliability. Can we count on each other? Can our students count on us? I am guilty of turning feedback in late. So can we give our students ongoing feedback on a regular basis that they know they're going to get from us? That's one example, right, of reliability. How do our students know that we're there for each other? How do they know that they are there for each other? Can they trust each other in the classroom? Can they be reliable in the classroom? Accountability is a really big one for us as teachers. Because, how many of you have ever made a mistake in the classroom? Ooh, me too, all the time. How many of you, okay, let's be honest. How many of you all have actually made a mistake but then told the students you were right? Right, I know, I'm sorry, yes. Accountability, do I own my mistakes? Can we co-create an environment where the teacher can make a mistake too? Even though the culture might expect you to be perfect. I think accountability is much more important than perfection. Owning mistakes, apologizing, making amends, laughing at your own mistakes. If you can be a learner, your students can be a learner. I think accountability is such an important one in our classrooms. The next one that Brené Brown brings up is the vault. Do we keep our confidences? Can my students trust me and trust each other with their vulnerability? Do we know how to share what's appropriate? That's a big question. That's a really big question, and I think that, how do I stop students that maybe are sharing inappropriately or sharing other people's things that are vulnerable? The big question of vulnerability, how do I create a safe space so that people can be vulnerable? Integrity. Do I choose courage over comfort? How do I live integrity in my classroom? How do I help my students live integrity? Right? Integrity shows up in our classrooms when we do what we think is right that might not feel so comfortable. Right? It's starting of hard conversations. When I have a student who bullies another student, can I bring both of them to the table and find a way to have a compassionate communication where they begin to understand each other? Not just call out the person who's bullying, because that behavior is trying to get a need met. So can I bring them both together? Can they understand, the bully learn about the impact? The person who received the bullying learn about what was happening for the bully. What need were they trying to get met? Do they need power? Do they need love? Do they have problems at home and they're trying to ease their pain? Like, what's going on with them too, for both of them, right? Integrity is doing what's hard, but doing what's right for the greater good. That's how one way we build trust. Non-judgment. Right? Can we really listen to what is without judging it? Judgment is an important part of life, but it's not something that I need to do 24/7 all the time. I need to use my judgment discerningly, right? So how can I be non-judgmental with myself and others to build trust and cooperation? And then generosity. Do I believe in the greater good of this person? How many times have you said, oh, my students are so lazy? Right? As opposed to, oh, my students are overworked and they're tired and they want to have some fun because fun, maybe, can I be generous with my students instead of judging them? Something to think about. That will help build the foundations of trust, which is one of the relational foundations for synergy. All right. Oh, there's generosity. Okay. The next foundation for synergy is intentional listening. Intentional listening. So Marshall Rosenberg gives us this beautiful quote that genuine listening is not about providing solutions. Right? It's about creating a safe space for others to express themselves. Oftentimes, people will just want to be heard. Right? There are times for solution-based listening, but in terms of building trust and synergy, and the genuine listening that we're looking for, there's 3 kinds that I want to share with you. Active listening. And active listening is, how many of you practice active listening already? So you know it. It's like when we echo back what somebody has said, and the speaker feels that you heard, as a listener, you got what they were trying to say. Right? Another kind of intentional listening is empathetic listening. When you're guessing at their feelings and needs, and you're really trying to understand their human experience, that's empathetic listening. That's going to build trust too, when you feel understood as a human. Your human experience is there. And the third kind of intentional listening that I want to share with you, that's the bell. I'll tell you about the bell in a minute after this. Contemplative listening. Contemplative listening is when we actually don't answer back. We're just listening so that somebody can say whatever they need to say. And success in contemplative listening is when the person says, oh, thanks, I needed to say that. You don't have to give them an answer. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to echo back. You don't have to show empathy. You just have to listen fully. Right? No. How many of you heard the bell that just went off? Oh, right. Yes, my bell went off, which means we've been here for almost an hour, right? Is that right? Yes. Let me check my clock. So I'd like everybody to very briefly stand up and stretch. You've been sitting a long time. It's an awful lot to sit and sit and sit and sit. Stand up and stretch. Right? I know, we gotta stretch. It's too much sitting, especially you just got back from a plane trip. And have a seat again if you'd like. Or if you need to slip out, it's a good chance to slip out. Who knows? Everybody stretch. That's what the bell is. Say hello. You're moving. You're good to move, right? The next thing I want to invite you to do turn, because I've been talking a lot, we all know that this format is not always the most effective format for learning, even though we love it. It's efficient on some level in terms of our interactions. I want you to turn to the person next to you or the people around you and I've been talking now for over 50 minutes or so. What do you remember from the last 50 minutes? What was important to you? We're going to take 3-minute conversations, and then we're going to come back, and I'll continue. So check in with the person next to you. What do you remember? What did you like? What did you notice? The amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, and now almost see. All right, let's come together. Oh, that wasn't the point. Thank you. So, how many of you sing to your students? I like singing to my students. I see that the conversations are continuing. That's a good sign, actually. It's synergy. But I'd love to continue talking. Can I continue talking? Thank you. You know, when I raise my hand, what are you going to do? Yeah, when I raise my hand, it means I'd love your attention. Finish your conversation. Raise your hand and look at me, right? How were those conversations? Yeah, I'm so happy that you didn't want to stop. Would you like to learn a little more, though? Shall I continue? Did you experience synergy in your conversation? Maybe? Interesting. All right. A little bit more. Relational foundations for synergy. Understanding the difference between pity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion. How many of you have seen this slide before? With me? Yeah, you guys have seen it. Yeah, I share this a lot. I feel like it's so important for us to know this so that we know as teachers what we're doing. We know as administrators, what are we doing? Are we giving pity? Right? Pity is like, oh, pobrecito. Right? I distance myself from the suffering, from the challenge. That's pity. Takes very little effort, very little understanding, very little engagement. It's very common. There's nothing wrong, essentially, with pity. It's just not helpful. And sometimes I don't have the capacity to do more. Right? Sometimes I do distance myself. I try not, especially in the classroom, I don't want to. But I just want to share with you that that's a human experience, and it's usually when I don't have capacity. I can't do more. If I can do more, I want to sympathize. I want to show my awareness of what somebody else is experiencing. And if I can do more, I have more effort, I have more understanding, more engagement, I want to empathize. I want to try and understand their experience. Or my experience if it's self-empathy. And if I have even more effort, energy, understanding, engagement, I want to do something to help alleviate the suffering, help support them, or celebrate something. I want to act compassionately. So compassion is the action. So if we go from the distancing to the acknowledgement, the awareness, understanding, and then acting, the importance of this to me is that as a teacher, I need to know what I'm doing and what my capacity is. Right? If a student feels that you're trying to understand them, if you're in the empathy and compassion space, you will create more conditions for synergy. Right? How many of you have had a teacher in your lifetime that you felt didn't understand you? Right? And how was your motivation in that class? Right? Yeah. And how many of you had a teacher that actually was very empathetic or compassionate with you? And how was your motivation in that class? Right? I know this is not new. It's not new, but I want to remember this because those are the conditions that create opportunities for synergy. Another relational foundation for synergy that I think is really important is valuing differences. This area is perhaps, how do I say this? Less popular, less well known. It's easy to superficially say, I value differences. But it is harder to live it, right? Because sometimes those differences feel threatening. Or sometimes those differences, like I remember years ago, I had a student come to me, and she said to me, Mary, I hated class today. I really wanted to leave, but I didn't, because I like you, but I hated it. First of all, I was like, okay. And my ego was like, right? This was a writing class. I was teaching writing at a university in Japan. And her name is Yumiko. Yumiko is giving me a great gift, though, because she was showing me about her different needs that I wasn't taking into account. And it was true, actually. I was really focused that class on getting through because we really had to cover something in the curriculum. So I was moving really fast. And I wasn't really paying attention to her needs. I was plowing through. I was a steamroller, right? Valuing differences takes time to really listen to our students and get to know them, right? And so I have 4 different ways of this valuing differences that I think are useful to learn about in our classrooms. How many of you have done work with diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility? It's becoming more of a buzzword now. For the rest of you that didn't raise your hands, this is one of our horizons that we need to work on. We need to understand the bottom line first. Identity. Who are all the people in our classrooms? What aspects of their identities are in our classroom but unseen? Right? How many of you have had the experience at the end of a class to discover that you have a student who's an amazing artist? Right? Or amazing singer? Or a single parent? Or, there's a lot of different aspects of our identity The question is, how much of your student's identity can show up in your classroom? How much can you hold? And that's when we get to begin to see diversity, and we can work towards equity and inclusion. Remember, I started this talking about how I'm thinking a lot about belonging? That's inclusion. Do you feel like you belong? Do your students feel like they belong? And what are the things that we do that help them feel like they belong? One is recognizing their identities, right? Celebrating the diversity, the biodiversity in nature is in our classroom, in our human, here, the diversity here is phenomenal, right? And then equity, based on our understanding of identity and diversity, does everybody have equal access to learning? And I just want to go back to the experience with Angela that I had this morning in Mary's session, where she was using her phone and the internet here. She was having more access to learning because she was able to both see it in English and also the translation in Spanish. I mean, that's an extremely privileged example because we have great internet at this hotel, because we have smartphones, right? That's one example. But it's a question, I think, that is very worth exploring in our classrooms. How many of you have seen these pictures before? Yeah, it's all over. The memes are all over the internet, right? That the reality we have is that the kids are trying to look at the baseball game and somebody has a much higher view to look over. Equality is everybody getting the exact same resources. Equity is them getting the resources they need to have the same learning opportunities, right? Justice is taking away that barrier, take away the fence. And inclusion maybe is getting those kids to play baseball too, right? What are we doing to move towards equity, justice, and inclusion in our classroom? That's going to help create the conditions for synergy. Another way of valuing differences is something called funds of knowledge. How many of you have heard of the term funds of knowledge? Yay, back row. Not so many. Happy birthday. Another good vocabulary term. Oh, the bell's ringing. You know what the bell means? It means just a quick, don't stand up, just a quick arm stretch. Maybe you're twisting something. We're doing a lot of sitting, got to take care of our bodies too. Funds of knowledge. Funds of knowledge is also something that's coming up a lot in the educational world. It is recognizing that your students come into the classroom with their own cultures, language, cultural practices, knowledge from their families. How do we bring that in? Now, you might think, if you're looking at your classrooms, your kids are all Dominican or Haitian, right? Maybe some other countries as well. So they might have some cultural things in common, but they also have things that are very unique to their families. How can you bring that into the classroom and use that as part of the classroom to value differences? Right? So funds of knowledge is a new term that I think is something new for many of us here. And I think that it's that if we start to work on how we're bringing funds of knowledge into the classroom, we will create conditions for synergy. And another relational foundation for synergy that involves valuing differences is this kindness and curiosity. I know those are nice words. Can kindness be our first response to anything? Can curiosity be more important than judgment? I think if we have kindness and curiosity, we're going to have the beautiful green tree. And that tree is nature that's alive for synergy. And so I wanted to just share those as just seeds to plant. The last aspect of relational foundations for synergy have to do with safe spaces. And how do we create a safe space for learning? How many of you think about this, thinking about creating safe spaces in your classroom for your students? Yeah, it's pretty common, right? We want them to feel good making mistakes. We want them to be able to share their emotions and their experiences. We want it to be safe for them to learn. How many of you also think about the classroom being a brave space? How many of you think about that? What we need to do in order for a classroom to be a brave space is where we can share our truths. We can be playful. We can be vulnerable. And we know that we can be who we are and we won't be attacked. Right? That is creating a brave space. And Amiris gave a session this morning on safe space and brave space, and I imagine you'll be doing more work like that here in the Dominican Republic. So we've got somebody already working on this if you want to learn more about that. But it's a really important foundation for synergy. Now, I've been talking about relationship stuff. We do need to think about how we plan our classes. How do we design the classrooms? And I came up with a list of questions to ask ourselves. If we really, really want synergy, we have to recognize that. Or if we don't want synergy, if I just want everybody to give me the right answer, that's not synergy. I have to accept that too, right? So what's your real intention? And are you willing to share some of the power that you need to share and some of the space that you need to share for synergy to happen? So you have that unexpected. So those are some teacher intention questions. Shared goals. Do I know my goals? Do I share my goals? Are my students' goals the same goals as my goals? No. And if they're not, how well aligned are they? Is there space in my classroom for students to have their goals along with our big overarching goals? Right? How do we work on cultivating shared goals in a way that's not just saying to the students, this is the objective today, this is where you're going. The next thing would be, do you want to go there? What's your objective? Can we align our objectives? Right? Building that kind of conversation in the classroom will give students more space to live synergy. Balancing structure and freedom. When I design the activities and the flow in my classroom, is there space for students to create, to make up their own content, to say whatever it is that they want to say? So I always think about what percentage of my lesson is outside of a right-wrong paradigm. How often in class do I just want my students to give me the right answers because I think that's going to show me that they're learning? But actually, I want to watch my students make mistakes too. I want to see them be creative and put language together in creative ways, because then they're going to be pushing their horizons. We need both, right? We need both, but often I've seen a lot of classrooms that are only about right-wrong learning, and that's so limiting, and there's no room for synergy in right-wrong learning. Right? Finally, 3 main areas for activities: play, playfulness, problem solving, and projects. PPPP. Am I incorporating play in my classroom? Even with adults, the playfulness brings out opportunities for synergy. And then problem solving. Group problem solving are always activities that help us synergize and see what else could be there. And projects. So those are the 3 areas for lesson planning that, or for activities that I think are really important in my lesson planning. And finally, feedback looping. How many of you all ask your students for feedback? How many of you give students feedback? Okay. How many of you... So this kind of feedback is asking feedback for students, asking students for feedback about their learning, to learn about their learning, not for your teaching. but to understand their learning. Right? When I ask for this kind of feedback, I change. Very simple example, years ago I had a student come to my school in Costa Rica. I was asking her, how was class today? She was like, it was okay, but the classroom is too dark, I can't see. I'm like, oh, we could buy a lamp. Very simple environmental thing. Had I not asked her, she might not have told me. And I wouldn't have made a change. So the evidence of feedback looping is when the teacher changes to better serve student learning. That is going to create synergy, or opportunities for synergy. So, again, I've talked and talked and talked. Would you be willing to experiment with me? Yeah? Okay. We're going to do one little experiment with all 1,000 of us and see how it goes. I'm going to show you a slide. You've got 40 seconds to look at it. Do not write. Do not write this. Do not write anything. Don't take a picture. Put your phone underneath your arm. Even if you want to take a picture, don't do it, right? It'll change your experience. I'm going to show you a picture for 40 seconds. I want you to remember as many objects as possible, okay? Do you agree to not take a photo? Yes. You agree to not write? Yes. Okay, thank you for following my rules. You ready? 40 seconds, go. Ten seconds, 8 seconds. Okay. Now I want you to write, please do not talk. Do not talk. Just write whatever you can remember. Do not talk to your neighbors, just be by yourself. 30 seconds to write down whatever you remember. Okay, next step. 1 minute to compare your list with the people next to you. And, wait a minute, the big thing is, if in your conversation you remember something that neither of you have, start a new list of those items. All right, so start a new list, see what happens. Amen. Kind of fun. Okay, let's come together. I know it's like a simple exercise, right? Thank you. A couple more minutes. Did you hear how the volume, when we put up the image, I was like, wow! That was fun. How many of you in your conversations created a new list of things you remembered together? Okay, that is synergy. The new list comes from synergy, memory synergy. Yeah. How was that? Yeah, that's synergy. So I'm curious now, we're going to wrap up. Did you experience synergy today in the last 90 minutes of your life? On some level. Any questions or comments? I really appreciate you allowing me to be with you for these 90 minutes. Any questions or comments about synergy? Yes. Somebody in the back there. Yeah. Can you? Oh, the microphone's coming. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, I just want to, yes,
Yeah.
there? Okay, I want to ask a question. I've heard teachers, many teachers that work at Miner, let's say, talking about their experience when coming students in the class. Have to get closer? Okay, and they expose their situation, many 50 students in the classroom. How can they get this synergy in their classroom when they have so many students?
Right, so many students. Woo. Well, I have a quick little question. I'm sorry about this, but we do have 1,000 people here today, right? Did you feel any synergy? Yeah. So, I don't. Right? It has to do with our relationships. And all of these conversations is synergy too, right? They're like, we have opinions, we have ideas. Okay, 1 second. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for raising your hands. Thank you in the back row for raising your hands, thank you. If the conversations could slow down just a little bit. I want to answer this question, then take one more question, then we're going to wrap up. So how do you do this in a classroom with 40 students? Right? How did I do it with 1,000? Right? It's about relationship. It's about patience. It's about playfulness and space. If I had 40 rambunctious Dominican students, you're paying a lot more attention than my 40 students would, right? I think I also need to do things to get my students' attention, to get them with me, to connect with them, right? And so I have to show up in the classroom ready to connect with those students. I don't know if that's a good enough answer for you, but it's my first answer. And after the classrooms that I've been in the Dominican Republic with Minerd, what I really learned and what my trainers really learned was that we had to do it in small chunks. Small bits and lots of connecting with my students. Lots of connection. So I don't know if that's a good enough answer, but that's the answer that I have for right now. There's one other hand up, and then I think we'll call it yeah.
Okay, just a quick comment. In a part of the presentation, we had a graphic with two edges in which it talked about the stages on this synergy creation, right? And I don't quite remember the first stage, but the second and third stage were the interesting ones. The second being where people agree, like they're not fully into in synergy. And the third one was full synergy, in which a win-win situation is created, right?
Okay.
So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think it goes along with the question the other teacher just asked. How do you create this synergy? How do you make these students get the impression that they are in a win-win situation? This is the one. Okay, respectful. This sense of the starting is this when or somebody has to lose if I can win, right? The second one, respectful, is I don't fully agree with this thing going on, but since I respect what happens in here, I respect the authority of the teacher or whatever, I'm gonna go ahead and comply. But the third one, it's a full understanding, and this is the important part, that this situation is not only beneficial for the teacher, but it's beneficial for me as well. And it goes along with a metaphor that you use. It's not a metaphor, right? But
yeah.
you used to explain in which the bird eats the insects from the cow.
Yeah.
The cow doesn't move because it's found it beneficial. So how do we create synergy, I'd say, is as students understanding, not because we explain them textually, but they understanding that the objectives they personally have can align with the objectives we as teachers have in the classroom.
Absolutely. You know, you said one word that I just want to highlight. It was compliant. If I'm striving for compliant learning in the classroom, which would either be defensive or respectful communication, we're not going to get synergy, right? We have to strive for the win-win, which is synergistic learning. So yeah, but I agree. I appreciate your explanation. Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome day. I'm so excited about today. There's so many great presentations. Thank you, National Geographic Learning. Thank you, Dominico. Thank you, State Department. Thank you, teachers. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, another round of applause for Mary Scholl, please. I think she deserves it. So thank you, Mary, for these inspiring words for us to reflect a little bit on synergy in the classroom. So ladies and gentlemen, of course, we have reached the end of our plenary session. Just a reminder, it just came in that our next convention, we already have the date, so please put it into your agenda. The official dates for our next year's convention, 2024, are 7th, 8th, and 9th of August. So make sure you have no trip planned, nothing planned. You're gonna be here next year, 7th, 8th, and 9th of August, 2023. 2024, thank you. All right, so earlier I asked you guys to go online, go to Instagram, and then did you all write a comment? Let me see how many comments we have on the post. Oh, wow. Yeah, I see 207 comments. There you go. So of the 207, we are trying to find right now 6 people. And then later on, we're going to have more winners, all right? So it's my pleasure to call P. Jacotin. Come forward. Kathleen _Diaz. Kathleen underscore Diaz. Teacher Mini Pons. Rosabien underscore 0. Aidin Rosalina. Vixie.xi.79. Not here. Alexander underscore Ramosa. All right, so congratulations. We have a wonderful gift for you. Please come to the stage for the official picture. As my wonderful assistant hands you. Thank you very much. The very first one to comment.
Hello.
Congratulations.
Hi, Ella.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. No, okay, the other one. Here you go. You're welcome.
Congratulations. You too.
Who else? The one missing.
Don't have to wait, you know my name. Sunshine and rain, some things don't change. Thinking about the days we were young, we were young.
All right, congratulations to the winners. We're going to have more rounds later on, so continue commenting. All right, so who's hungry? Yeah. So I would like to acknowledge some of the institutions that are here with us today. So we have the Ministry of Education. Anyone from Minerd Teachers? Minerd Teachers? A round of applause for you. Thank you for coming. My people from MESIC, English Immersion Teachers. All right. Fe y Alegría. We have some here. Dream Project. All the way in the back. Isfodosu. ICDA teachers. Let me see my ICDA teachers. Santiago in the house. Santiago. All right. So let's formalize this again. So the time has come to exit the room. We're going to do it in an orderly fashion. As you can see, all of you have I've received a wristband. So it's going to be color-coded. So I'm going to be calling color by color. But before that, I would like to thank our distinguished guests from the front row. You'll be the first ones to exit the room and move to the 5th floor where you're going to have the lunch. So, Mr.